with contempt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If one of your operators were captured, subjected to waterboarding and enhanced interrogation techniques, which you, I believe, supervise, would you consider that to be moral, since perhaps the other entity did not have legal restrictions, and good tradecraft, as you appeared to do when you were involved in it previously?
Senator, I don't believe the terrorists follow any guidelines or civilized norms or the law. CIA follows the law.
Excuse me, madam. You seem to be saying that you were not following civilized norms and the law or anything else when you were conducting those self-same activities, if that's the analogy you're going to draw.
Senator, I'm sorry, can you I can't.
Very simple. You have an operations officer who's captured. He's being waterboarded. I've asked you very simply, would you determine that to be immoral and something that should never be done, condoned in any way, shape, or form? Your response seems to be that civilized nations don't do it, but uncivilized nations do it, or uncivilized groups do it.
The United States does it.
A civilized nation was doing it until it was outlawed by this Congress.
Senator, I would never obviously support inhumane treatment of any CIA officers. We've lost CIA officers over the years to terrorists. I just gave an example. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed personally killed a Wall Street Journal correspondent and filmed that. I don't think there's any comparison between CIA officers serving their country, adhering to U.S. law, and terrorists who, by their very definition, are not following anybody's law.
Finally, in the Morrell report, and which you've somewhat acknowledged, there was opposition to the destruction of the tapes by two White House counsels, the Counsel of the Vice President, the DNI, the DCIA, and a member of the Congress. And yet, those tapes were destroyed. Do you consider that to be insubordinate actions without the director, in this case, Mr. Goss, being notified?
Senator, I think that consultation with the director was essential, and a lesson coming out of that is the importance of making sure all the stakeholders have agreed to include congressional oversight. There's also a leadership lesson. Don't let real security issues go unaddressed.
So the action was insubordinate, and you would not countenance anyone in your organization doing something like that?
I expect my officers to bring those difficult issues to me, and I think I have a reputation for not just leaving them in the inbox. I will say this, Mr. Rodriguez has taken full accountability for his decision, which he thought he was operating under his own authority.
Thank you.
Senator's time's expired. Senator Feinstein.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Ms. Haskell.
Good morning, Senator Feinstein.
While many nominees have classified backgrounds, you are very unique. You have 30 years of undercover experience. Accordingly, we ask the agency that your records be declassified. I think I signed 3 letters in that regard, to make an informed decision, and because the public should be aware of the background of its leaders. Instead, the CIA selectively declassified only small pieces of information to bolster your nomination, while keeping damaging information under wraps. Giving the CIA's refusal to make your record public, I'm very limited in what I can say. And I think, as you know, I like you personally very much. This is probably the most difficult hearing in my more than 2 decades I have ever sat in. But let me begin. In his memoir, former CIA Consul General John Rizzo described how, in 2005, Jose Rodriguez was promoted to be Deputy CIA Director for Operations and installed as his Chief of Staff an officer from the Counterterrorist Center who had previously run the interrogation program. Is that you?
Senator, I'm so pleased you asked me that question.
Yes or no will do.
No. And for the record, if you have your staff check, Mr. Rizzo has issued a correction. It is true that it is hard for in a secret.
My understanding
that is not accurate.
Recently confirmed that it was you.
No, he issued a correction. When people write books, I didn't read Mr. Rizzo's book, so I didn't even know that was out there. Mr. Rizzo, and actually I read about it in the Washington Post last night. Eric Wemple, I believe, wrote a story talking about the failure of certain organizations to correct their facts, and that was one of them. And he noted that Mr. Rizzo, about 10 days ago, he was wrong. He didn't fact check, and that has been corrected. I would never even served in that department, nor was I the head of it.
Let me read directly his quote from the book. Several weeks later, Porter promoted Jose Rodriguez to the position of Deputy Director for Operations, Jim Pavitt's former job. Once more, Jose installed as his Chief of Staff an officer from the Counterterrorist Center who had previously run the interrogation program. Between them, they were the staunchest advocates inside the building for destroying the tapes.
Senator, I did not run the interrogation department. In fact, I was not even read into the interrogation program until it had been up and running for a year. I never served.
Were you an advocate for destroying the tapes?
Senator, I absolutely was an advocate if we could within and conforming to U.S. law, and if we could get policy concurrence to eliminate the security risk posed to our officers by those tapes, and the consistent legal
advice. Aware of what those tapes contained?
No, I never watched the tapes, but I understood that our officers' faces were on them and that was very dangerous at a time when there were unauthorized disclosures that were exposing the program.
But it also exposed how the program was conducted, because they were tapes of the actual interrogation of 92 detainees, as I understand it.
No, the tapes were recordings of only one detainee. It was 92 tapes of one detainee.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Let me, in November and December of 2002, did you oversee the enhanced interrogation of al-Nashiri, which included the use of the waterboard as publicly reported? Yes or no?
Senator, anything about my classified assignment history throughout my 33 years, we can talk about in this afternoon's classified session. There are guidelines on, as you know, existing classification guidelines, and I should go back to your first point, which is very, very important, about why we haven't declassified more about my history. There are existing classification guidelines that apply to operational activity of any officer. It has been suggested to me by my team that if we tried to declassify some of my operational history, it would help my nomination. I said that we could not do that. It is very important that the director of the Central Intelligence Agency adhere to the same classification guidelines that all employees must adhere to, because there are very good reasons for those classification guidelines. Exposing operational information can be damaging to sources and methods, as you know, but there is also a physical risk to officers who go out to the far ends of the globe and conduct dangerous missions, and they believe that their participation in those dangerous missions will be protected. It would be a security risk if we started declassifying associations between CIA officers and particular terrorist or terrorist operations. So I am adhering to the existing guidelines, and I believe that it is important and that I could not stand before the CIA if I sought for short-term gain to declassify my operational history.
Thank you.
Senator's time's expired. Senator Rubio.